Good thing about the exchange is that you don't pay capital gains on the sale.
Yeah.
Bad thing about the exchange is that when you invest in a new property, you don't get to depreciate the full value of that property.
Welcome to The Keys to Your Legacy with your host, Elijah Keys.
Hi, thanks everyone for tuning in. This is The Keys to Your Legacy, a podcast devoted to trust and estates issues. I am joined by Sohrab Sangha, the founder of Kismet Law Group. I've known Sohrab for some time now, and he is an outstanding realtor and a real estate investor. And so we're really happy to have him here to talk about his experience and how things work with trust and estates. Sohrab, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great, thanks. Well, so you and I met through my firm, through Related Matter, right? But your view or your perspective on real estate is a little bit different from a lot of realtors. A lot of realtors, they do purchases, they do sales. You're kind of more on the investor side. Is that right?
Correct. So I have a team of four. We have four total agents. We're growing year to date. We've done roughly, give or take, $65 million. We're probably going to end the year somewhere north of 100 million. But a huge chunk of that comes from the investor side. Myself personally, I'd say 99.9% of my personal sales, those are mostly investor focused, where we do buy and hold. These are investors that are purchasing properties and using it as a rental or doing an exchange down the line. A huge chunk of my even personal transactions comes from the flippers. A lot of my investors, again, I'm a silent investor in certain portfolios in there. Well, a lot of my sales, personal sales, come from the flipper side.
Right. I mean, we've had a lot of discussions about those. And I think that you contacted us about a different matter that you were actually looking to move on. But the thing that was so interesting to me was the different perspective. I mean, just to hear you talk about the real estate investment side. And so we have a lot of viewers who are in different stages. Maybe they are real estate investors, maybe they're not. If someone is considering real estate investing, what things do they need to consider before they're looking at actually doing an investment? What are the kind of first steps that they should do?
So I think it really depends on what their goals are, right? Because the way I always encourage, or the way we even decide whether we're going to work with an investor or not, we really kind of want to learn they could come into our office. We're actually building a new office in Fremont. They could come in, we could do it over Zoom, do it over phone. We just kind of need to really learn their goals, right? We need to know what their goals are. Kind of like a financial advisor, but not exactly, right? So at least that way I know what exactly I'm searching for. So let's just say if someone's looking for a quick 100,000 plus minus in profit, they're likely not going to want to do a buy and hold, right? Because buy and hold is a long-term play. It could at least be 3 to 4 years before you start seeing net positive. So it really depends. So it's case by case. We like to learn a little bit more about what their goals are and just kind of go from there.
Well, that's outstanding. So it sounds to me like when you first meet with someone, congratulations on building a new office, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we really need someone locally.
I'd like to come and see it once it's done. I mean, you came to my place. I'd love to see your place once it's done.
Yeah, we should have it ready within the next month and a half or so. We're finalizing the lease right now. Yeah, it would take us about a month or so from there to kind of get the ball rolling.
Outstanding. Well, that's good. Well, something that's really interesting about real estate investing is that there's so many different ways to do it, right? There's some people that buy subject to, there's some people that take property and they hold it. Some people take property and they flip it. Some people aren't looking so much for the property, but they're looking for the business in the property, right? How do you identify someone's goals as part of their overall investment strategy? What do you do? What kind of steps do you go through?
It's just asking the right questions, right? For instance, just going back to like how quickly they're looking to turn that into a profit, or some folks are looking for a 1031 exchange where they've had a couple properties for a while or one large property. We had an example recently where someone was blowing out of a $5.5 million worth of portfolio. They didn't want to they wanted to do a full tax. They wanted to defer taxes, right? You didn't hear from us because they actually had an in-house attorney that they worked with. Well, that's one example, right? So we'll kind of take that and just get to work from there. As for how we decide what would be the best fit for them, we kind of let them decide. We're just there to guide them through by asking the right questions. We let them kind of pick which strategy would work best for them.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. I'm really glad that you're able to do that. I'd like to ask you a little bit about you because you're actually a really interesting guy. You have a family, right? You're married.
I have two daughters. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. What
Yeah,
kind of things? What kind of things do you do with your family on the weekend? Well, I'm sorry, not on the weekend because on the weekend you're busy.
I work. That's right. I work 7 days a week. But no, I still try to make time. I think that's the point of having kind of multiple agents on the team. I have a couple other agents where, Ruby, my sister, I think you met with her, right? She
I
had a
did, yeah.
client. Yeah, so Ruby's my sister. She's on the team. She does our buyer side. Then we have a couple of other agents on the team. So anytime I need help, where if I have plans with the family or whatever the case might be, they're able to help out a little bit there.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so as for what we do, I mean, my wife, she's a nurse. She works for a hospital. She works every other weekend. So it really, I think it kind of works out perfectly because then the weekend that she's working, I get to spend a little bit more time with the daughters, with my kids at home. And both of her grandparents, like my parents and my wife's parents, they live in the area. So they're able to help out a little bit with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Something that I noticed here, I was looking over your sheet here just a moment ago, just to remind myself that you do you mentioned two different types of planning two different types of sales that you're involved in which are actually directly involved in my field, which are 1031 exchanges and charitable remainder trusts. Can you
Right.
describe to everybody what a 1031 exchange is?
Sure. And you probably know this better than I do. What the short is that when someone has held an investment property for a certain amount of time, now they're looking to sell that property or sell that investment, and they would like to use the proceeds from that sale to purchase the next property by deferring taxes. So rather than paying that tax bill right off the bat, they would just defer it to whatever that timeline would be that they would have in
Right.
mind.
Right.
And
I'm glad I'm glad that you're really skilled with that. But for anybody that's looking, it's important to talk to a tax advisor who can talk to you about some consequences, because there are two big consequences to doing 1031 exchange, right? Good thing about the exchange is that you don't pay capital gains on the sale.
yeah,
Bad thing about the exchange is that when you invest in a new property, you don't get to depreciate the full value of that property. You depreciate the actual basis. So basis and property reduces over time. And you don't get normally when you buy a piece of property, you get to reduce that basis over time by depreciation, which offsets income. You get to lower your income tax bill based upon the rental income. But when you do a 1031 exchange, you don't get that full benefit. You might get part of it, but you definitely don't get the full thing.
exactly. As soon as that question comes up, I'm like, Mr. Keys, let's get on a quick Zoom so you can help out.
There's another one that you mentioned called the CRT. And CRT, which is a charitable remainder trust. I just did with my YouTube video. We just published a video on what those things are.
Mhm.
But you've seen a few of them. Is that right?
I've come across a couple of them, but again, my knowledge with those is very limited. So anytime that comes up, I do, again, I'm the type of guy, I either know how to do it or I'll figure out a way to do it, or I have someone that would do it right. So CRT probably qualifies for someone who I know will do it. As soon as I have someone, like anyone that's asking questions related to it, so I defer them to folks such as your team, where I know they're in good hands.
Yeah, so a CRT, you mentioned that just in your intake, and I don't want to take too much time on this because we have a video on this, but a CRT is a charitable trust that lasts for a period of time or maybe someone's lifetime. And you can put a piece of real estate that has a huge value but a low basis, so you're going to pay a lot in capital gain. You can
Yeah,
put that property into a CRT, so when Sohrab or another realtor sells it, you don't pay the capital gain right away, you defer it, and it's paid over time. So it's a good tool to actually defer capital gain over time so you don't get a huge hit at once. You also get an income tax deduction for money that you put in, for part of the money you put in. So it's a good tool. Well, let's talk for a minute about your process here for a sale, because I remember sitting with, I might have told this story before. I remember sitting with a realtor who had 40 years in, and a client who knew nothing about selling and buying real estate. And I'm not a realtor. I don't know a whole
yeah,
lot, but I can recognize a person who's good at it. And I
yeah.
recognize you, so you're good at it. But I remember sitting with a 40-year realtor, and there was someone in his first sale, and the 40-year guy is mentoring the brand new realtor. And the brand new realtor is touting the fact that he was first in his class, and was touting the fact that in his schooling, was touting the fact that he had a new license, that he's a realtor. And I just had to ask the most important question: how can you save the sale? And so tell me for a minute about what makes a good realtor, because I knew immediately that
Mhm.
the 40-year guy knew exactly what he was doing and that the sale was going to be safe. But the 1-year guy had no idea of what it took to be a good realtor. So for you, what is a good realtor?
I think again, knowing what you're doing, right? I know it sounds like, yeah, kind of generic. Was just a lot of folks kind of they jump right into it, like just sales, 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 right? That's not the way it works. For my first, I think almost like 60 days, I didn't do a sale when I first started doing it. Ruby, she's my sister, it was a little bit easier to train. I think we lived in Newark at the time. She's there locally, she's in Fremont. That's probably a good example. For the first 60 to 90 days, she had no sale. Yalda, she's one of our newer agents. She's training right now, no sales so far. What what a lot of people fail to realize is not just kind of having your first sale right off the bat, it's knowing what you're getting yourself into, right? Pick up any, if this is not to sound arrogant, pick up any piece of the paperwork that we're doing for the listing side or for the buyer side. Ask me what anything from that paperwork means, right? We're able to answer that. Ask any of our agents on the team, they're able to answer that because we know if we're hitting send on some for someone to sign on some sort of a paperwork, we need to know what we're sending, right? A lot of agents we see, I come across a lot of offers because we do a lot of listings. I'm mainly on the listing side. We come across paperwork where folks just don't even know what they're filling out. A lot of the information gets left blank. You already probably know about the commission changes that we're dealing with throughout the U.S. We've had offers come through where someone wants to get paid 2.5%, but they're not checking the right boxes. Like I could ratify without actually having needing to pay commission on that, right? We won't do it because it's obviously we have to be a little bit careful with that. It's just not, a lot of folks not knowing what they're filling out, what they're sending out for their clients to sign, because that also comes with huge liability afterwards. So it's knowing what you're doing, knowing your paperwork. I mean, our requirement is that for Yalda or any new agents that are starting on the team, we typically give them 60 to 90 days, depending on their comfort level. Those days or those 2 months, 3 months, whatever that would be, they're required to go through all sort of paperwork, right? Then we have a kind of like unofficial exam or quiz that I take care of myself. They have to spend a couple of hours going through all the paperwork to making sure where we're doing role playing, just me asking the right questions and knowing that I'm comfortable with them getting on the phone with other clients. So that's one part of it, right? Knowing what you're doing. I know that's a long answer. But that's like one huge part of it where a lot of people don't know the paperwork that they're filling out because it comes with a lot of other liability.
Yeah.
And second, just you don't have to be the best at everything, right? Just know what you're really good at, right? Like for me, that was always pretty much like a year and a half into it, I realized I was really good on the investor side. I think it also, my background kind of played a little bit of role into that. Where as soon as I realized that investor side of things were going really well for me, that's what I laser focused on, right? So I brought other agents on the team, Ruby, Lauren, and Yalda, like they're on the team. They're working with a lot of the retail buyers, meaning, a lot of the kind of end users, folks that are going to purchase and live there, versus the investor side. So we want to make sure that we always have someone dedicated for each side. Our mix right now is pretty even. I think it's probably like 50-50, 55-45 on the retail versus investor side. But that took a little bit of time, right? So just know what you're good at and focus on that rather than trying to do everything yourself. Marketing or other stuff. Like for us, we have dedicated folks on the team that handle that.
Right. The interesting thing about realtors to me is that the sales process, people seem to think that it's simple, that it's easy, and it's really not. Just because there's so many things that happen behind the scenes, the thing that I think is great about realtors is that when someone comes out of a sale and they say, "Wow, that was easy," my answer is you probably just worked with really good people because the sale can get screwed up in so many ways. And I think for me, and not as a buyer, not as a seller, but as an observer, as a professional involved in these sorts of transactions, the best realtors from my perspective are those who know the right people to save the deal, right? Because the
Yeah,
deal might fail. So I remember asking the 40-year realtor, and I asked you actually the same question in our dealings. How many foundation contractors are very hard to get a hold of? They're booked out for months in advance. And I asked this realtor, how many foundation contractors can you get to my home within the next 2 days so that we can save a deal? And he said, I can get 3 there. And you said, I can get 4.
yeah,
And that's really the main value, that you can actually save the deal if everything goes bad. The paperwork, all these things, it's difficult to know exactly what the effect is behind that, but really it's someone's ability to find the right people at the right time.
I agree. And let's just go back to the Menlo Park. Now, you remember the Menlo Park deal that we had?
I
I
do,
mean,
yeah.
That's a prime example of that, right? If we have time, I'm happy to talk a little bit more. I know it's going to sound more like a shout out to your team, but
Sure.
that's literally how we saved that transaction, right? So we were working directly with the family to purchase that property off market. It was a probate. Well, what they didn't realize, their attorney never even filed any of the paperwork. They did some sort of an application with the court, but there was no hearing date. No one really talked to them about how long the process was going to be or where the proceeds should go into, right? But what they didn't realize that there were like 4 or 5 family members on the title, so it got really complicated real fast, right? We gave them an all cash offer. We were supposed to close in 7 or 10 days, whatever it was, where as soon as it brought up, like, hey, just so you know, we failed to realize it's not in a trust, it's a probate. We still think, so what I was told by the agent that was involved on the other side, that, hey, it should be a fairly quick process because the family's on the same page. I said, no, I deal with probably 10 to 15 probates a month. I can guarantee you we're not going to be able to close in 7 to 10 days. And sure enough, they were given bad information by the attorney. You guys were, I mean, I can't thank you enough for that, right? I know it ended up being just a quick consultation and they had to stick with their attorney.
It's okay.
If it wasn't for the Zoom meeting that we did, I guarantee you we wouldn't have closed that sale. I mean, the family was happy. They still got, it took a little bit of time, just like you had expected. Took them a little bit of time to close, but we were still able to close. I think it was like 45 or 50 days, but that was because the delay was from the court, right? Well, had you not provided that guidance or had I not recommended that, hey, forget that attorney, let me put you in touch with someone that I trust, let's have a quick chat with them, we would not have closed that deal. So that's just like going back to your foundation example, it's very similar, right? So at least with the foundation example, I have 4 guys, right? When it comes to probate attorneys, you guys get booked pretty advanced and not every attorney is gonna know what they're talking about, just like that attorney did not on our Menlo Park deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, every case is different, right? And there is no one size fits all when you're talking about these things, but a court process is kind of similar in the way that you open it. You file papers, and it takes the court 4 to 5 weeks to actually get a hearing for you. And if things go right, then the hearing is approved, and then it's a minimum of about 15 to 20 days after that you can close. So if you did it in 45 days, it flowed through really smooth. And that's good. I'm glad that it did.
I mean, that's if we get lucky if they have full authority, right? If it's limited authority, which it easily could have been, had the attorney not done the right paperwork after we talked to you, it would have been a nightmare.
That's right. Yeah, there's two general types of probates. One where the executor, the person who's managing the estate, can take actions without court supervision. And then there's one without. And to sell a property without court supervision, it's generally 60 to 90 days because the court has to approve every single part of the transaction. And the worst case about it is that you go to court and you have to bid in court. So I've stood in front of the judge and raised my hand and said, would anybody like to buy on this? And then multiple buyers. And then you have a court reporter and everybody has to say what it is. And if it's not an all cash offer, you can't take a lower offer that's not cash. You have to take the highest offer, even if it's crappy terms. You have to take the highest offer. So much better if it's all cash, just because it's done. You don't have to worry about banks. There's no closing procedures. Go.
Exactly. I mean, we could make that smooth on our side with the right people are not involved, attorneys included. It could be a nightmare, especially on deals like that where the family she had already moved out. Actually, I think she was, the day we realized that it was not a probate or it was supposed to be a probate was the day we met her for keys, just to exchange keys or to put a lockbox there. That's when the agent realized that it was a probate. So the family had already moved out. Well, now for at least another 2 months, they couldn't get their money. Easily could have been far worse than that.
I'm really surprised. The thing that's so surprising to me about that arrangement, where there was a probate, they needed a probate sale, that nobody thought, that the agent didn't think that once that person signed the listing agreement, that they didn't even think to pull a preliminary title report. That should be the first thing that the realtor does. First thing, to see, do you actually have permission to sell this property? That's what
Correct.
the prelim says, right? And the prelim would have said, no, no permission. Or maybe the prelim did say that and the realtor didn't even know how to read it.
No, so there was no prelim actually. So because I think it was supposed to be a quick close, right? Because 7 to 10 days. So what they realized, we'll worry about disclosures afterwards. What to your point, I agree. I mean, prelim is literally because even though we're paying all cash, one of the must-haves for us is we're always going to want a free and clear title, right?
Of course.
Meaning we do not want any liens kind of move. Solar lien or something minor like that is fine, but we don't want anything crazy where one of the authorized signers for the probate or whatever the case might be are not even there to sign. So I agree. I mean, it's just going back to the attorney or realtors. There's always going to be all sort of realtors and attorneys where
Sure.
some know what they're doing, some might not know what they're doing. So we're always going to have that.
So I think so. I need to back up and unpack that because you and I were professionals. We can just chat back and forth. It's
Yeah.
actually really interesting. An hour-long conversation with a client to explain all the issues involved might take 5 minutes for Sohrab and I to work out. Hey, you need to do this, blah blah blah. We talk all the lingo, but there's some lingo that Sohrab used that I want to unpack. He said prelim, so preliminary title report. It's a report issued by a title insurance company, and it guarantees who is the owner and who can sell and what sort of debts there might be on the property. So I'd mentioned liens. A lien just means a debt, right? It's a debt that's attached to the property. So somebody has to pay. That debt is owed by the property owner. So if somebody buys it, the value is going to be lower. So if you're looking at buying investment property, you want to make darn sure that there are any liens on that property, because if there are, then you owe them. You, the property owner, owes them, or the person can come take it. There's one type of lien that you can never know whether it's there, and it's basically a secret lien that the IRS can put on property. Kind of nothing you can do about that. But if you're looking at buying, make sure that you get a preliminary title report. And if you don't know where to get one, go to a title company or just call a really good realtor, because they'll know 4 or 5 title agents that just pour them out like crazy.
It's free of cost. You don't pay anything for that.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to me that when you're talking about real estate transactions, there was another word that you said that I wanted to kind of parse out, and I don't remember what it is, so maybe it'll come up again. But it's interesting to me that when people who are in different fields are working together, that those things cross over quite a bit. So you've talked about probate sales, you've talked about trust sales. What Sohrab does, he sells properties, right? And that's complicated enough. I'm not going to do that. Sohrab also says, well, look, I don't deal with this. You go, you talk to the people that do it, deal with them. So there's plenty of things that I don't do. And there's plenty of things that Sohrab doesn't do. But one thing that I'd like to encourage any listener to do is that if you don't know who to trust, find someone that you do trust and ask them. Because when you call me, my network is your network. I get calls all the time from clients. Somebody called me yesterday and said, hey, I'm sorry, on Friday, hey, do you have a referral to a personal injury attorney? Sure, here's 3. Do you have I get asked for realtors all the time, and I give Sohrab's name sometimes. And so, it's just, if you don't know who to go to, just ask a professional that you trust, and they'll give you a couple of names.
Correct. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it typically it's just a network thing, right? For when it comes to real estate or even your line of business. And to your point, we get those calls all the time for contractors, right? So a lot of the buyers that Ruby, Lauren, or Yalda on the team they're closing transactions for, we typically take the property as is. It needs a lot of work afterwards. So we call them in-house contractors. But these are just third-party contractors that we're in business with. There's no referral fee of any sort. The only thing that we ask for is that our clients that are getting sent over to you guys, just same thing as yours, right? We're not asking for any referral fee. The only thing we ask for is that our clients are in good hand and they're well taken care of. That's what we kind of ask for, pretty much like from everyone that we're referring to, whether it's attorneys, contractors, any marketing that they're looking to do, photos or whatever the case might be. We keep a running list in our in-house with all of our referrals on there.
Yeah. So that office that you're in, is that at your home? Are you at home right now?
This is my home office, correct?
It's your home office?
Yeah.
Okay. What is that statue in the shadow box behind you on your left-hand side?
Oh, this one right here?
Yeah.
I used to play cricket. So
Did you really?
Yeah. I played cricket for, I think I probably stopped playing 2014, 2015. It was after, so pretty much like throughout high school and college, I played cricket. Saturday and Sunday, that's all I used to do. I wasn't married back then, so I had a lot of free time on my hand.
That's great. What did you major in college?
Econ. I was an econ major. Actually, I did a dual. First did business, focused in finance, and then I did econ, so I did a dual.
You're kind of in the perfect field then. econ and finance, I mean, that's really what you do.
Exactly. And I mean, just going back to, so after college, I think I might have mentioned this to you when we initially met. I used to work for Fisher Investments. I worked with them for, I think I was there for about 7 years. So I'm a former equity trader. So I used to do equities. That was my last role with Fisher. I did that up until 2019, I think. That was when I was doing real estate still part time. So I used to, from 2018 until 2020, I used to do it part time. Was starting 2020 is when we kind of really kicked things off doing it full
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
It's a really robust background. I mean, a background in econ and finance, and then going into Fisher Investments, which is great investment for, by the way,
Yeah,
and doing equity trading there. And then you moved into real estate full time, and now you have your own shop.
exactly. Yep.
Wow. That's quite a
Yeah.
journey.
Yeah, it's been a fun one. I would do it all over again if I had to.
Would you?
If it wasn't for my wife's a nurse, so if it wasn't for our schedule conflict at the time, I don't think I ever would have left Fisher. I was very happy with how things were, pretty comfortable with what I had going. And I'm glad I did because I'd rather have what I have now than back then.
Yeah. Best thing that I've ever said about my job is that I've kind of a weird job
Yeah,
where my job is to meet with people and explain problems and explain solutions. It's really the core of my job. I'm a
yeah,
professional writer otherwise, so I explain problems, explain solutions, and then I write. It
yeah,
seems boring, but I like it. But the best
yeah.
thing about my job is that every day, every single day, as far as I have any kind of availability, I picked up my kids from school every day.
Not exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. It's just the flexibility with their schedule. Again, this is not, again, some agents brag about, like not working more than 15 to 20 hours a week. I'm still putting 50 plus, right? But it's
Yeah.
just like you're gonna earn what you're gonna put in. So it's not so much for timing, it's just the way I kind of get to pick my own schedule, right? For meetings, if I'm working at Fisher, I wouldn't be able to do podcasts such as this one, right?
Of
Or
course.
spend a little bit more time with my daughters. I'm working from home. You don't get a lot of that flexibility working
Yeah.
elsewhere.
I
Yeah.
know a lot of financial advisors, and when I started the podcast, I think we're filming episode 11 or 12.
Mhm.
I invited probably about 15 different financial advisors to come on the show because they're friends of mine. I like them. I enjoy spending time with them. But only one of them said yes because they have so many limitations to what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry. My staff here said that episode 9. We're booked out through a lot of episodes, but thanks, Melissa. So episode 9. And so what's interesting about all this is that only one was able to say yes. So I think that if you are Fisher, you couldn't have said yes. They definitely wouldn't have allowed you to come on because they have so many controls.
And there's just so much limitation, right? How we're openly talking about what I do at Kismet or what I'm not able to do. We just can't do that. And I understand, like, it's just the regulations are very different for the financial side, worse, even for real estate side. This is just high level stuff where we just can't do that. Even now, like, even though I'm not at Fisher, there's a lot of things that I'm not allowed to, or I probably wouldn't even want to get into.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Saurabh, it's really good to talk to you today. It's a little bit shorter episode, but I'd really like to ask you, what is it that if the audience could walk away with one thing about real estate investing, and we haven't explored a huge amount about it, but
Mhm.
if the audience could walk away with one thing about real estate investing, you having a background in finance, having a background in trading, having a large real estate firm, 4 or 5 agents, and spending so much time with real estate investors, if people are looking at it and they're looking from the outside, what is one thing that you would want a layperson to walk away with, understanding what it is that they need to know?
So I will give you two because again, retail side is very different than the investment side, right?
Okay.
Or the investor side. So on the retail side, I think agents love always talking about how it's always a good time to buy. It's not, right? It all depends on your personal financial goals. You'll know when it's a good time to purchase. There are a lot of examples, myself included. We own a property now, or a couple of properties now, but we didn't always. There are going to be times where renting will likely make a little bit more sense, right? Sometimes your rent is a lot cheaper than what you will pay in property taxes. Insurance, PITI is what we call it,
Yeah.
principal insurance taxes, and
Principal, interest, taxes. There also might be mortgage insurance, PMI.
exactly, yeah. So PITI is what people need to typically kind of focus on. So short is that you're going to know when it's time to purchase, right? It's not always a good time to purchase. Well, when it is, just kind of pull the trigger, right? Because there's been so many times we have clients back from 2020, 2021, they're still looking because what happened was back then they were not ready to pull the trigger, missed out on 2.5% or whatever the mortgage rates were at the lowest it was. Now they're comparing that to 6.5, 7%, or at one point almost 8%, right? So it just doesn't make sense because your mortgages have more than doubled since then.
Right.
So just that's one for the retail side. I think on the investment side, people tend to rush a little bit because they see a lot of flips kind of going in and out. I call them wannabe investors, right? Because you don't really realize what you're getting yourself into until you're at the finish line. Because some of these properties, and I've been personally part of it, where we're purchasing it back, or we're representing the retail buyers, where you talk to investors and they've lost over $250,000, $300,000 on a transaction, right? On a deal. So just know what you're getting yourself into. And then going back to the foundation example, issues such as that, right? Just know what you're getting yourself into rather than just kind of rushing. Know what your goals are, buy and hold, 1031 exchange down the line versus doing a quick flip. So know what your goals are and just execute accordingly. Work with the right people. I mean, yes, everything comes at a little bit extra fee, right? Just going back to the example of us, my family and I needing to establish our trust, right? We understand it's going to cost money, but we're paying you for your time. We're paying you for your experience and your advice that we're getting, right? So just work with the right people. I think that's huge.
Yeah. I think I heard a very famous business coach. I went to a business coaching seminar in Las Vegas last month.
Mhm.
And this very famous equity trader where she owns, I think, 13 companies. She said either you pay for experience or you pay to train to learn experience. So she was giving me an example to say, hey, look, I could either hire someone and try to figure out how to do this one action, or I could hire someone who already knows how to do it because they've already done it 1,000 times. The difference between the two is that in the first example, if they're trying to figure it out, she has to pay her time and her energy, and she has to make the mistakes to learn how to do it the right way, because that's the only way you can learn. You learn by learning from other people's mistakes, like a book, or you learn by making the mistakes yourself, which is experience. Or you hire someone else who already has the experience. And so it's very interesting to me that individuals that say, well, I'll figure it out on my own. My answer is totally fine, totally
Yeah.
cool. But you have to understand that real estate is very expensive, especially in this area. And so if you're going into an investment, if you're putting in a huge amount of money, it's really worth it to use a professional because you can't afford to take that loss. Unless you can, if it's a smaller part of your portfolio, totally cool. But one more thing that I wanted to say was a quote that I heard from a real estate investor, a pretty famous one who you probably follow, who said that most new investors don't understand the amount of properties that they have to look at to find the one that they want to buy. I mean, I heard, and your eyes got really big, and I heard that some investors will look at 50 to 100 properties before they even put in one offer. Is that true, or is that understated, overstated?
No, I think it's in line, especially in the area. I mean, for the Bay Area, because that's where I'm primarily focused. It's going to be a little bit different because our inventory is very tight, right? So it really depends on where they're from. But even for the Bay Area, that seems pretty reasonable. I mean, on a monthly basis, we're probably looking on the investment side with the funds or with the other investors that I'm working with. We're probably looking at good 40, 50 plus minus deals, and we're probably purchasing a few of those, right? So I would say the conversion rate for us has been anywhere between 5 to 7%, which is still pretty good, all
That's
things
really
considered.
high.
It
That's high.
takes it takes a long time, right? Like for every deal on average, and again, it's going to be different for each person. My review time is anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour because we're doing our due diligence not just on the property with the neighborhood comps that we have to run comparable sales for the property. So it takes a good 30 to 45 minutes plus minus to do the work. So there's easily 100 hours plus minus that we're probably spending on a lot of these deals, and then we get to close, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 of them every now and
Yeah.
then.
So you're talking about hundreds of man hours, right? Of filtering, essentially filtering and analyzing and doing the comp rates and understanding whether it's a good ROI and what's the cap rate and all these things. Cap rate needs means what's the capture rate you put money in and how quickly do you capture your money back over time? It's percentage value, right? So you're looking at all these numbers to understand what is the right number and you're filtering. And then finally, once you filter, then correct me if I'm wrong. So as I'm summarizing your words here, once you filter, then you find the ones that you're willing to move on. And once you move on those, then you have an actual close rate. Is that, am I
Exactly. So
understanding that right?
that's, yeah, correct. That's the conversion rate. So say anywhere between 3 to 5 deals for every 100. I mean, those are my personal ones, right? So keep in mind the investors that I work with or the groups that I'm a part of, these folks are probably working with a lot of other agents, right?
Sure.
So their numbers could easily be more than double, if not even worse, right? Because those are my personal conversion numbers. So 5 to 7% of the deals that I'm kind of looking through or that I'm a part of initially, we're getting to close those on a monthly basis. I think as a team, we're closing anywhere between for the last 12 months. I think it has been roughly 8 to 9, but that also includes our retail side, right? Because
Sure.
our retail side is a little bit different. I mean, these are folks that are coming directly to us to purchase and to sell. So conversion there will be extremely high. The investor side is a little bit different.
So why is your company called Kismet? I've always wondered that. I don't know why.
There's a fun story. It wasn't supposed to be the name because we're part of Side Inc. So Side is a broker of record.
Okay.
So I used to be with Coldwell Banker here in Fremont. Split up, left on very good terms. I'm still on very good terms with the broker at Coldwell Banker. We just kind of needed a little bit more name recognition for the team. We were doing a good amount of business. I think at the time we were somewhere around 35, 40 million a year. So when we're doing that kind of business, we just wanted a little bit more name recognition and freedom to do the growth and kind of like at our own pace, right? Where we didn't want not so much for a direct report with a lot of the red tape. I just needed to find a way around it. So we decided to launch our own brand. We
Okay.
could have done it as part of Coldwell Banker, where we decided to go with Side Inc., just kind of keeping everything else in mind.
Okay.
I went to Side. They had a marketing team that was supposed to help us decide what names should be. They presented probably 12 or 15 different names for us to pick. Kismet was not on there. What the person that was doing the presentation from marketing, he said a sentence. I don't even remember what the full sentence was. So we only had 3 agents at the time, Ruby, Lauren, and I. We were on the call. We were on Zoom. And it's just, she said, I don't remember the full sentence. It was she said Kismet somewhere in her sentence, right? So I'm fluent in a couple different languages. I was like, wait, I didn't even know that was like actually a borrowed term. So it's a borrowed term from another language, which means the same thing. It means destiny in I think 4 or 5 different languages.
Okay.
So if you think about destiny and real estate go hand in hand, we're
Yeah.
like yeah, we got off the Zoom. Ruby and Lauren, they were on that call. So Ruby brought it up. Ruby's like, hey, she said something that kind of stuck with me. And I feel like if we were to just add real estate in there, it kind of makes total sense. Initially, I wasn't a big fan of it. Well, I think over time, like as kind of days passed, we couldn't find any other names. And this one kind of really stuck with us. So that's how
What,
we came.
what languages does it mean destiny in?
I think it means in Hindi, Punjabi, Urdu, and Turkish as well, I believe.
Turkish. Yeah, I know a lot of those languages are really similar. A lot of clients who come in who are from India, they say, hey, I speak Hindi and Urdu and Punjabi, and I speak
Yeah.
two, and that's considered a lot where I'm from.
Yeah. I'm actually fluent. I could read and write Hindi, Punjabi. Urdu, I can't read. It's pretty when it comes to speaking, it's the same as Hindi. So I could read and write Hindi and Punjabi just fine.
It's amazing. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's just how I got into real estate. I mean, Kismet is just like how real estate wasn't even supposed to happen. I don't think we ever covered that. Real estate wasn't really supposed to happen. I was very happy with how things were. I was looking for other opportunities at the time, just for time, not so much for within like finance. Like I was happy at Fisher, well, more so like how I could have my own business and have my own schedule. And my wife, she's like, yeah, like I know a lot of agents, like you really have to be a numbers guy. So I don't know if she did that just to kind of piss me off or what it was. She's like, yeah, I heard it's really tough. I was like, no way. I was like, I could probably study for it and pass. Literally took me, yeah, I think for my actual study hours, I probably put in 9 hours. I took a day off from Fisher, took a Friday off, studied Friday and Saturday morning my exam in Oakland, passed. Right, I wasn't supposed to do anything with it because I never thought I was going to be in real estate. I would decided to hang it with someone. First couple of months didn't do much. As I kind of finally got a hang of it, started closing deals as the money started flowing in. I was like, "Yep, this is it. This is what I see myself doing for a long time."
Makes
So
sense.
the same thing. It wasn't even supposed to be there, and we just decided to roll with it.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is why we gelled, because you're a numbers guy and I'm a numbers guy, right? I deal
Yeah.
with procedures and numbers, and I trained as in communications, right?
Yeah.
So talk, but then tax attorney. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I said the same thing. She's like, hey, I don't say this a lot. She's like, if they're working, I think we picked the right attorney for the trust that we were working through. She's like, yeah, I don't say this a lot, but this is where I could see the personality fit and why we kind of went with that. And I'm glad we did, because we've been extremely happy on the personal side and when it comes to Kismet or our clients.
really glad that you said that. That means a lot. It really does. It means a lot.
No, we appreciate you.
My,
Yeah.
my firm started on a card table in my back bedroom just under, it was 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
come a long way. So thanks for appreciating that. Well,
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah.
thank you, Sohrab, for coming on. You're becoming a good friend, and I really appreciate that. Can you please tell people where they can find you, and what kind of things, if they're thinking about Sohrab, what kind of things they should think about?
Sure. So yeah, they can reach out to me directly. My phone number is 510-258-6373. That's my direct line. They could give me a call, send me a text, or send me an email at Sohrab, SOHRAB at kismetteam.com. They could visit our website, which is kismetteam.com, or like I said, my direct, probably the best way to kind of give me a call directly or send me a text.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that. Thank you so much for everyone who stuck with us to the end of the episode. Go ahead and follow us on all places where you can find podcasts. You can follow us on social media as well, at Facebook and LinkedIn. And go ahead and subscribe for future episodes so that we can help you develop the keys to your legacy. Thanks so much.
You've been tuning into The Keys to Your Legacy with your host, Elijah Keys. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, keyslawgroup.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.